welcome to Ask IITians. How are you all? I hope you all are doing very well and I hope you all are very good. So, students, what the thing is that today we are going to start our new chapter. The name of this chapter is Mixtures and Pure Substances. And see, student, this chapter is something about mixture. Now, if you see that what's the word is saying that it is mixture. So, if I ask you that from the word only, that what do you understand by the mixture? So, you'll say, ma'am, when we mix something, like if there are two or three things and when we mix them together, so we call it as mixture. Exactly. And if I ask you what is the pure substance, so you'll say, ma'am, which do not contain any kind of impurity. So we call it as the pure substance. Exactly, students. So you are very correct. But it's just that today we are going to look at about the mixtures and the pure substances from different point of view. We can say from the point of view of chemistry. So that's how, student, we are going to see some interesting things in this chapter. That is the mixtures and pure substances. Okay. So before starting the session or before starting the topics, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Arushi Sharma and yes, I'm going to teach you this chapter. So let's start with the chapter. Okay, so here we are having something. So I just want to ask you one question here. If you look at this picture, oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, it happened sometime. I just forgot to take my pen. Okay, now it's fine. So see, if you see here that we are having two pictures, actually now it will work. So you can see here that this one and this one. So what kind of difference you are looking at? Any difference you will be able to see here? That what type of difference you can see? So you will say, ma'am, in the very first picture which I am looking, that the first video, I can see that the person is adding something which is getting soluble in the water, because what it is the water only. So that is getting soluble in the water, and after the mixing I cannot find out that where that particular substance has gone after the mixing up. Exactly, that is going on. But if you look at the second one, that this is the first one and this is the second one. So in the second one, what we are observing here is that the blue kind of substance, this blue substance, when the person is adding it into the water, so it is not getting soluble in that. So what you are getting here, that in the first picture, that the substance which you are adding in the water, it is getting soluble in the water, and even though after the after when it is going to be dissolved completely, what you are getting, that it is going to be completely soluble and you will not find out that what you have added into it. Exactly. But if you see in the second picture that it is not going to be soluble, and secondly you will be able to find out that okay, some blue color substance is present in the water, some blue kind of thing you will be able to look at there. Exactly. So that's a, student, about such type of mixture, that when you are adding something and it is going to be completely dissolved in the water or in any other type of the liquid, and after the mixing up, when you will be able and you are not able to find out that what you have added, so that type of mixtures, generally we call them as the homogeneous mixture. Homogeneous mixture. But it's just that, student, we are going to see all of these things about a homogeneous mixture and what are the mixtures, what are the substances. That's why I have just started with this example, so that you will be having some idea that okay, what you are going to study in this chapter. So you have seen that okay, when the person is adding something into the glass of water, and after the mixing up, it is going to be completely dissolved and you will not be able to find out that what the person has added up. Exactly, by looking at. And in the second case, it is just that you will be able to look that okay, what he is adding, because it is blue in color and even though it is not soluble. Fine. So that's a, student, such type of mixture and what we call them. We are going to study about all of these things in this chapter only. Fine. So now what are the topics which we are going to cover up in today's class? It's just that we are going to covering up pure substances, element, classification of elements as the metals, non-metals and the metalloids, and we are going to see that what are the compounds. See students, that the topics which I am looking here right now, so if I suggest to you that why it is important, because student, pure substances, element and the compounds, and metals, non-metals and metalloids, all these are the topics of your class 9th and 10th. That means when you are going to a class 9th and 10th, not only 9th and 10th, even though in your class 8th also you are having a chapter that is metals and non-metals, and when you are going to a class 9th and 10th, so definitely you are getting these chapters in some advanced version. So that's how student, this chapter is very important, so that if you just having the idea from now only, so when you are going to a class 9th and 10th, it will be a great help to you. Exactly. So at that point you will not finding out something missing up, that okay, what I'm going to study, that okay, what is the substance, what is the element, because the thing is that if you're studying all of these topics right now, so when you're going to a class 9th and 10th, it will be easy for you. So I would suggest you just watch this video with a great attention, so that everything is going to be clear to you. Okay, so now starting with our topics. So the first topic is we are going to study about pure substance. But students, what the thing is that to understand the pure substance, we have to understand one another term that we called as the matter. Okay, if I tell you this matter is a whole chapter in your class 9th, when you are going to class 9th, you are having chemistry. So that means you are having the matter as one of the very first chapter. So the thing is student, as I've already told you, pure substances, that we can say, okay, if I'm talking about generally, that if we call something as pure, so what it means? So it's just that the substance which is having no impurity, no impurities there, or we can say not any kind of impurities there, so we call them as the pure substances. But how we are getting them? So now we look here. So as you can see this flow chart, so this is the matter. Now first of all student, what is the matter if we talk about? So matter is something that has some mass and it also occupies some space. For example, if I ask you that this is my pen, and if I say that I'm not able to break it down like this, so why? So you'll say, ma'am, it is very hard and it is strong in nature, that is why you are not able to break it down. Exactly, because you will say, ma'am, it is solid in nature. Why we are calling it as solid? Because it is a matter. Now why it is a matter? Because student, matter is something which has some mass. Exactly, this pen is having some mass. Actually, I don't know what's the exact mass is, but yes, it is having some mass, and if I put it somewhere, so obviously it is going to occupy some space as well. So matter is something which occupies the space and as well has some mass, so we call them as the matter. And the matters are having three states. One is the solid, another is the liquid, and the third one is the gas form, or we can say the vapor form. So eventually student, if we talk about liquid also, so the water is also having some mass, and obviously water occupies some space. Even though if we talk about gases, that the atmosphere, that atmosphere which we are having, so what it is a mixture of gases only. And even though student, it's like that matter is something which has mass, like it's not about heavy mass or light mass, even though gases are very lighter in nature. Exactly, but even though they are also having some mass and they are occupying all of our atmosphere, that means we also consider them as the matter. Now student, when we have discussed about the matter, okay, that matter is something which is having some mass and it occupies some space, so we call it as the matter. Now when we have seen that okay, matter is something solid, liquid and gases, but what are things student, then we have decided to divide the matter into the pure substances and into the mixture. So what's the mixture is student? When two or we can say more things mix up together, so we call them as the mixture. So when so we can't say them as the pure one. Why? It's not like that the things which we are adding them into, they are kind of the impurities. I'm not saying that, but it's just that student, when we mix up something like two, three, four, five, say six substances together, so there is a kind of the mixture. For example, if we talk about tea, so what happened in the case of the tea student, that for the tea, first of all, we require water, which is liquid. Then we require what? We require sugar. We require milk. And what else? Tea leaves. Exactly. So tea leaf we require. So all of these things we require student, and after mixing all of these things, we get the mixture of what? Tea. So that's a student by adding two or three substances together when we are getting something. So we call it as the mixture. Now, but what is the substance? That pure substance. If we talk about in the terms of the chemistry, so it's just that student when there is only one substance and we are not adding any of the other substance into it. So we call it as the pure substance. It's not like about the impurities. If you think that ma'am is talking about impurities, no, impurities I'm talking about like when the substance is, if I say for example milk, so there is only milk, you are not adding something into it, that means it is a pure milk we can say. So that's a student from the point of view of impurities. I'm not talking about any dirt or any unwanted particle. We are talking about that yes, matter is something, and we are classifying the matter into the two categories. One is the mixture. When you mix two, three, four, five substances together, then you get some mixture. But the pure substance is that in which no any other substance is mixed up. So we call it as the pure substance. Fine. I hope you got the point about that. What is the pure substances? And see, don't take that thing that impurities that we are talking about dirtness or any kind of unwanted particles or any microorganisms or bacteria. No, we are not talking about such impurities. When we are talking about the pure substances from the point of view of chemistry, so we talk about that when the particular thing is having only one type of substance and no any other substance is going to be mixed up, or no, or we can say that we are not adding something into it, so we call it as the pure substance. Okay, so we'll see that how the pure substance we are having. Okay, so the substance that cannot be physically separated any further into other substances, exactly like what I have told you, that it is a definition, like appropriate definition we can say. But what the definition is saying also, that pure substances are something which you will not able to separate out into the different substances. Exactly. For example, student, if I say that I'm having one substance and we are not mixing up anything into it, so that how we are going to separate it out? Exactly. If it is having only one kind of substance, so how we are going to separate out into other substances? So that's a student. Pure substances are those type of substances in which you can't separate out the other substance because it is the pure one. But if we talk about mixture, for example, student, that is the tea. So in the tea, what happened that whenever you prepare tea, so what you have to do is that you have to strain the tea so that the tea leaves will left behind and you will be able to take that tea. Exactly. So that's a student, you are able to separate out the substances from that na. So that's why we are calling it as the mixture. So mixture is something in which you will be able to separate out the substances which are mixing up together, but the pure substance are those type of substances which is you can say there is no such mixture, no any other substances present there. Fine. Now, moving towards the classification of pure substance. So, students, pure substance is classified into two categories again. One is the element and another is the compound. So, what's the element is? The simplest form of matter that cannot be separated by any chemical or the physical process. So, it's the very simplest form of matter. For example, student, if I talk about the copper wires, okay, so in that copper wire, student, what happened that there are only that in that copper wire, student, there are only copper and copper. So that's a student, when any such material or any such substance is having only one type of element or one type of we can say substance, so we call them as the elements. Fine. Like we talk about copper wire, iron boxes, so they are just having only one type of substance and that substance is iron. If we talk about copper wire, so they are just having copper. So that's a student, when anything is having only one type of substance or only one type of element, because they what are the copper and all of these things, so these all are the elements only, that which we are having in our periodic table, so we call them as the elements. Fine. But now if we talk about the compounds, so students, what happened that whenever the elements combine together, so we call them as the compound. How? As I'm having example actually, but for example, student, that if we talk about water, so water is what? We know this thing that it is H2O only. So whether we are taking water in the ice form, because we know this thing that water is having three type of form, that it could be possible for the ice, and it is also present in the liquid nature which we usually drink. Exactly. And it can also be converted into the vapor form. But all of these three state, it is having only H2O, H2O, H2O. That means the compound, that we can say the compound is something in which elements combine together. But overall structure, if we see, so we will find out only one type of compound present in it. So the whole structure of the water is having only H2O, H2O compound. So that's a student, elements that are chemically compound in a fixed ratio. That means H2O, if it is there, so whether any of the state is there, whether it is ice, whether it is liquid, or whether it is vapor, so it's just that there will be the formula that is H2O. That means one oxygen and two hydrogen are combining together and forming the structure of water. So that's a student, when elements combine together in some fixed ratio, so we call them as the compounds. Fine, I hope you got the point that what are the elements. So the elements are the simplest form of matter which you can't separate out by any of the process. As I've given you the example of copper wire, I have given you the example of iron box. So what happened in that case, that it is only made up of iron. If it is only made up of iron, so what you are going to separate out from it? Exactly. So that's why pure substances are two types. One is the element and one is the compound. And in the compound, student, what will happen, whether any state of the matter is there, whether it is liquid, solid, or vapor, or even though if we are not talking about any state, so it's just that the whole structure or the whole we can say whole matter is having only one type of compound in the fixed ratio. For example, if it is H2O, so that means it would having the two hydrogen and one oxygen. You will not going to be find out that okay, one type of water is having H2O and the other type of water is having H3O or H4O4. It's not like that. If it is water, so definitely it will be H2 only, and it will fixed into a very particular ratio. That ratio is not going to be changed. That is the H2O, na? So hydrogen is 2 and oxygen is 1. That means with they are present into the ratio of 2:1. Fine. So that's why matter, mixture, pure substances, and pure substances, element and compound. Fine, students. Now, what the thing is that elements has been divided into three categories. Now, what are those categories? So, students, these three categories are metals, non-metals, and metalloids. So first of all, if I ask you what are the metals? So students, metals are something, or we can say that the metals are those type of elements or those type of substances which are having the ability to conduct the heat and electricity. Having the ability to conduct heat and electricity. That means student, through these metals it will be possible so that the electricity can flow. For example, student, if I take the example of the copper wire, actually copper is represented by Cu in the if we see the periodic table or if we see the chemistry part, so that in that what happens, student, that copper is represented by the Cu. Okay, so it is an element and copper is a metal. For example, in our houses, the wiring which has been done for the electricity purpose, so that we can have electricity in our houses, they are just copper wires only, because student, copper wires are metal in nature, and that is why the metals are having one ability that they can conduct heat and electricity. As you can see here, that here it is a metal. It is a metal piece. Okay, and what happened when you are switching on it, or like when you are completing the circuit, so you can see that this bulb is glowing up. It is glowing up. Exactly, that means from that experiment what we have seen, that yes, metals are having the ability to conduct the heat and electricity, or we can say that metals are something which are the conductor of heat and electricity. That means heat and electricity can pass through them. That is why, student, that the wires which we use in our houses, they are made up of the metal, and generally they are the copper wires are there. Okay, and student, if we talk about different things about metals like other properties, so yes, one of the properties that yes, they are conductor of heat and electricity, and secondly, student, that they are very hard in nature, hard and strong. But there are some type of the metals as well which are not strong in nature. For example, sodium and potassium. So sodium and potassium, if I write down here the exception, so sodium and potassium is something, student, that they are the soft metal. That means they are the exception, that even though you can cut them with the help of the knife, but if you try to cut the iron box with the knife, will you be able to do that? Exactly no, because these are the metals only. That is why, student, the metals are hard and strong in nature. They are the conductor of heat and electricity, but there are exception also, and they are always hard and strong. So that is the metals. Now, if we talk about the non-metals, so non-metals are something which are acting as an insulator. Insulator means, students, that they are not having the insulator. Yes, they are not having the ability to conduct heat and electricity. And generally, students, they are very, like you can say, they are not hard, they are generally soft, and that is why you can see here that the picture, that there it is a fine ceramic. Ceramic is a non-metal, okay, and when the piece of the ceramic is present and when you are switching on, so you can see that the bulb is not glowing up, not glowing up. That means electricity is blocked. So that's how, student, non-metal, if we take the example of the wood, wood is what? Wood is having the more content of carbon, and carbon is what, student? It is the non-metal. So so what happens, student, if any of the scene in movies or in any of the cartoon, or if anywhere you have seen that thing, or if you have heard also, that if any person is getting electric shock, so what we have to do is that we have to remove that person by using some kind of the insulator, so that so that the flow of the electric current will get cut off and that person can be safe. So in that case, what we generally use, we use the wood blocks or we use the plastic material, so that we can break down the passage of the current into the human body. So that's how, student, non-metals are the insulators. That means they are not able to conduct the heat and electricity. That is why, student, if some mishappening is going on, or someone is having this problem, or that is the electric shock is there, so what you have to do is you have to remove the passage of the current from that switchboard to the person. And how you are going to do that? You just have to insert some non-metal there. Non-metal, generally, which we find it out in our surrounding, it's just that the wood is there, or the plastic rod is there, or plastic bottle, something like that, so that the flow of the current is going to be stopped. So that is how, student, elements are classified into three categories. One is the metals, non-metals, and now third one is the metalloids. So as we have discussed about the metals and non-metals already, so it is not like that, student, that all of the non-metals are only soft. Some of the non-metals are very hard as well. So if we talk about diamond, so diamond is also a non-metal because it is also made up of the carbon content only, but it is very hard in nature, as you have seen. Exactly, like diamonds are very hard, like we can't break down easily, even though the cutting of the diamond is not easy. So that's how, student, metals and non-metals are having exceptions. But if we talk about general, that if we take a group of the metals and non-metals, so the major properties which we are getting from them, it's just that the metals are those type of elements which are able to conduct the heat and electricity. That means they are acting as a conductors, and the non-metals are those which are not able to conduct the heat and electricity. That means they are acting as an insulator. Fine. Now, if we talk about the metalloids, so what are the metalloid, students? So the metalloids are something which are having the characteristics of both metal and non-metal. For example, silicon, boron, antimony, germanium. That means they are having the half property, some part of the metals and some properties of the non-metals. That's why we call them as the metalloids. So what happened, student, that germanium or boron, so what happened, these germanium and silicon, they are made up, like they are used to make some kind of semiconductors. Semiconductors means, student, that okay, metals are something which are conductor, that means they are conducting the heat and electricity at a very high scale. But the semiconductors, we can say that yes, they are also able to conduct the electricity, but not that much as compared to metals. That is why these metalloids are here, that which are having the ability of both metals and non-metals, and they are generally used for the preparation of semiconductors. Fine. So this is the classification of elements, students. I hope you having a clarity about the metals, non-metals, and metalloids. Good. Now coming to the compounds. So what are the compounds, student? As we have already discussed, so we have seen that okay, elements are something which are the pure substance. That means they are having only one type of element present in it. But when those elements combine together in some fixed ratio, then we call them as the compounds. And then elements are combining together, so they are forming the bond with each other. So that's how the compounds are chemically substances made up of two or more elements that are chemically bound together in a fixed ratio. For example, H2O. H2O is what, student? It is water. So in water, what we have seen that it is the 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. That means it is a fixed ratio. It is not going to be changed. And how they are getting combined with each other? Because hydrogen and oxygen is bonding with each other. They are having some chemical bond. That is why they are combining with each other. As you can see here, that oxygen and hydrogen. So they are combining together, and that's why we are getting the structure of H2O, that is the water only. Okay. Now if I ask you carbon dioxide, that is the CO2. So can you tell me that CO2 is a compound or not? Exactly, student. CO2 is also a compound. Why we are calling it as a compound? Because element is carbon and oxygen. Exactly. Carbon and oxygen are the element present in it, that is C, and that is oxygen. And carbon is 1 and oxygen is 2. That means they are present into the ratio 1:2, and it is not going to be changed at any cost. So that's how, student, whenever any two or more elements combine together with the help of the chemical bonding, so that's how, student, we call them as the compounds, so that we can't separate out them with any by applying any chemical or physical force. Yes, at somewhere it is possible, but when two or more elements combining together with the chemical bond, so in the fixed ratio, so we call them as the compounds. For example, H2O is there, CO2 is there, and we are having different compounds as well. Fine. Exactly, students. Okay, so now I'm having one question for you. Graphite. Do you know that where graphite is used? So graphite is used up in the making of the pencil leads which we use. So graphite is a type of what? It is a metal or non-metal? So if you give the answer, student, that yes, graphite is a non-metal. Why? Because the content of the graphite or the graphite is made up of the carbon only, and carbon is what? Carbon is a non-metal. You see, ma'am, how we are going to find out which is metal and which is non-metal? So students, we can say that the metals are something which are the conductors of heat and electricity, and the non-metals are something which are not the conductors of heat and electricity. That is why graphite is made up of carbon and we are calling it as non-metal. But students, again, there is an exception. Exception is what? As we have seen that the non-metals are not the good conductor of the heat and electricity. So graphite is one of those non-metal which is a good conductor of heat and electricity. Now why? Because, student, that the structure of graphite is formed in such a way that there is some electrons, and those electrons, now you'll say, ma'am, what is the electrons? Exactly. So electrons are something, student, which are negatively charged, and due to the presence of them, electricity flow, or we can say that the current flow. So that's how, student, graphite is one of those non-metal that which is a good conductor of heat and electricity. So that's how, student, we have seen that yes, metals and non-metals and metalloids are there, but due to some exception, we have some different kind of metals and non-metals which are having some characters of the metals, or some are having the characters of the non-metals. Exactly. So that's a, student, we have seen, but it's not like that. It is overall. It's not like that. It is just that, student, generally what we have seen is that the metals are strong, hard in nature, whereas non-metals are soft in nature and they are not that much strong. But if we talk about diamond, diamond is very strong in nature. Exactly. And graphite is a good conductor, so that's why, yes, we are having some exceptions. But if we talk about generally, so the metals are the conductors and non-metals are the insulators. And then we have seen the compounds. So when two or more elements combine together in a fixed ratio, and their composition, we can say this is called as the composition, student. If I ask you that what's the composition of H2O, so you will say, ma'am, 2 is to 1. That means hydrogen is 2 and oxygen is 1. CO2, 1 is carbon is 1 and oxygen is 2. So that means their composition is fixed, which is not going to be changed at any condition. So that's how, student, we have seen the substances, pure substances, compounds, and the elements. So with that, student, we have completed the topics which we have to cover up today. So now what you have to do is you have to watch the video with a great attention, and if you're having any doubt, any question is there, what you can do is you can put your question over the public or the private forum of Ask IITians, and you will get your answer from the expert side. So till then, student, study well, watch this session carefully, and then we'll continue with the another part of this chapter in the next session. Okay? Till then, bye bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and yes, keep learning from Ask IITians. Thank you.